Home. Donaldson wasn't even sure what that meant anymore. Sure, he owned a beach house south of LA, a condo in Aspen, and a suburban place in Central City. But he hardly spent time at any of them. 27 weeks a year on the road drained him. Every few days, a new city, a new crowd. People constantly clamoring for his attention. It wore thin. Had it ever been fun? He wasn't so sure anymore. At least now, there would be some peace and quiet. No entourage, no fans, no agents, just Crystal, and even that was a mixed blessing. Maybe he could recharge before she realized he was home. Maybe a night in his own bed, in a quiet house, would make everything feel a little more normal. The steady hum of the airplane's engines did little to lull him to sleep. Fortunately, no one on this flight seemed to recognize him. Maybe it was the scruffy beard he hadn't shaved in a week, or the plain red flannel shirt he wore. He didn't care what the reason was. He was just grateful for the anonymity. He shuddered as flashes of past encounters with desperate fans and endless demands for time and money surfaced in his mind. Everything had a price, he reflected. Fame simply charged the highest toll. Gazing out the window at the blanket of clouds below, Donaldson thought about how his life had spiraled. He had never wanted fame. He just wanted to play his guitar, his beautiful, metallic blue Gibson Les Paul Custom. Playing it was a need, almost like an addiction. Plugging it into his Marshall stacks and letting it wail was pure bliss. His fingers would dance across the strings, pulling out soaring notes and bending melodies to his will. But when the show ended, when the amps cooled and the stage lights dimmed, that same guitar felt like a heavy burden, chaining him to a sea of screaming fans and suffocating expectations. Perspective, that's what he needed. At least, that's what Morty Andrews, his agent, had told him before he boarded the plane. "You'll be back," Morty had said. "You just need a little time. Your schedule's clear for a month. Go home, relax, write some new songs." Of course, Donaldson knew the truth. What Morty really wanted was an album, a full album of fresh songs. The record label was getting restless. It had been almost 2 years since Barrier Rift had released anything new. They were overdue for another platinum hit. Was there anyone left in his life who didn't want something from him? The plane began its descent, and Donaldson silently hoped Morty hadn't tipped off the paparazzi about his return. Maybe, just maybe, he could get through the airport without being ambushed by a dozen flashing cameras. He followed the sluggish crowd off the plane, trudging through the terminal toward baggage claim. Finding a support pillar, he leaned against it, closing his eyes, trying to let the tension bleed away. Off to his left, he heard a voice. "It's him, Mom. It's got to be him. Jennifer, don't bother the man. Even if it is him, he deserves some peace." Finally, someone who understood, Donaldson thought. "But Mom, he's amazing. Please, just an autograph? Cassie and Janie will never believe I saw him without proof. He looks so tired, Jennifer. Maybe leave him alone this time." "But Mom," Donaldson realized he wouldn't get any rest unless he acknowledged her. With a small sigh, he cracked his eyes open, peering over the rim of his sunglasses and beneath the brim of his cap. He spotted the teenager immediately. She was watching him closely, her green eyes fixed on him with hopeful intensity, silently willing him to notice her. She had long red-brown hair tied neatly into a ponytail and wore a bright pink t-shirt that said Princess across the front. Her casual jeans and cheerful attitude reflected the typical energy of someone her age. Donaldson reminded himself not to overthink it. He had met countless young fans over the years, some filled with excitement, and others simply hoping for a memorable moment. Standing to the girl's left was her mother, a slightly older version of her daughter. A few wrinkles around her eyes and mouth gave her a more seasoned appearance, and a tired look hinted that the day had already been long. Her auburn hair was pulled back into a shorter ponytail, and she wore a neatly tailored tan jacket over a white blouse, along with a modest skirt that fell just below her knees. Donaldson could see the younger fan struggling to stay composed, clearly eager to approach him. After a moment, he decided she had earned a small reward for her patience. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a replica of his latest album cover. After scribbling a quick message on it, he put his pen away and removed his sunglasses, ready to make her day. The PA system announced his flight number, and as the throngs of people crowded forward to find their bags, he approached the mother and daughter. He watched as Jennifer pushed her way to the baggage track, and when she had her back to him, he tapped her mother on the shoulder. "You have a very well-behaved daughter," he said as she turned to him. "Thank you," she replied, turning to look at Jennifer again. "Would you mind giving this to her?" Donaldson asked, placing the autographed photo in the mother's hand. "You didn't have to. It was my pleasure," Donaldson said. This could have been ugly if she had screamed and shouted. Good behavior should be rewarded. "Well, thank you. I'm sure Jennifer will be thrilled." Donaldson smiled and nodded, and then turned away to find his bags. Finally, he was out of the airport. He had his suitcase slung over his right shoulder and his guitar case in his left hand as he walked through the doors toward the cab stand. He paused before crossing the street and was surprised to see Jennifer and her mother waiting on the center island for a shuttle. He watched as her mother gave Jennifer the photo. He wished he could bottle the excitement that flowed from her as she stared at the photo and read what he wrote. He was about to get in the yellow taxi when someone tapped him on the arm. He turned, annoyed at being interrupted, to see Jennifer standing there. "Mr. Woodson," she said meekly. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm like your biggest fan." "You are welcome, Jennifer," Donaldson said, relaxing when no one else seemed to be paying attention to them. "Don't miss your ride home now." "Oh yeah? Bye," Jennifer shouted as her mother waved frantically. Donaldson chuckled as she raced to her mother's side, just before the doors closed on the shuttle bus. What a cute kid, Donaldson thought to himself as he slumped into the taxi. The sun was sinking below the tops of the mountains, creating a spectacular multicolored painting in the sky. Donaldson sat on his balcony with his feet propped up on the table and a cold bottle of beer in his hand. He felt at peace for the first time in a long while as he watched the sun slowly sink out of view. His peace was shattered by the sound of the door banging open and Crystal swept back into his life. "Donnie, you're back. How come you didn't call? I missed you, baby. How was the tour?" "Hello, Crystal." Donaldson stood as she crashed into his arms and kissed him. "I was hoping for a nice quiet night to relax." "No, baby, you've got to get dressed. It's May Day?" Donaldson wondered how she knew he was back in town, but at least now he knew why she was dressed to the nines. The Stanberrys threw a May Day party every year, drawing all of the important people in Central City. Donaldson wasn't sure why he continued to get an invitation. Barry Riff's popularity was still solid in Central City, but the band hadn't issued an album in 2 years. He knew that Crystal Lane had to be there. She was constantly schmoozing with the big money folks, the Stanberrys and the Ashforks, hoping to move up the food chain in their local television market. Anchoring the noon news wasn't going to get her to New York. Donaldson sighed. Crystal was pretty enough, especially in that royal blue sequin gown she was wearing tonight. Her blonde mane was pulled up above her head, baring her shoulders and her neck. The strapless gown barely contained her. She is so obvious, Donaldson thought to himself. Was she that obvious when we first started dating? He wondered. "You go, Cries. I need calm and quiet tonight." Crystal was having none of that. She tickled his earlobe and nibbled on his neck. "You gotta go, Donnie. Everyone is going to be there." Another good reason not to go, Donaldson thought to himself. "Please, baby. I need you to escort me," Crystal whined softly in his ear. "I'll be ever so grateful later." Donaldson sighed. He really didn't need this now. Was Crystal the problem, or just a symptom of the problems dragging on him these days? He sighed. "Okay, Cries. Give me a few minutes." Crystal purred softly as she let him go toward the bedroom. "Axel, what are you hiding out here for, man? The party's inside." Donaldson turned and stuck his hand out. "Hey, Sticks. I didn't think you'd be here. How's Robin doing?" Charlie Sticks Matthews shook his bandmate's hand. Charlie and Donaldson started Barry Rift their senior year in high school. Both men wore their hair long and sported a well-trimmed goatee that seemed to be all the rage with the musicians. Donaldson's was brown, Charlie's blonde. "She's pregnant again." Donaldson chuckled and saluted his friend. "They know what causes that these days." "Yeah, maybe one of these days I'll put up a fight." "You'd lose." "No doubt. She is one determined woman." Sticks smiled as he blew his wife a kiss across the room. Donaldson smiled. He wished he could find a woman like her. Robin didn't play games. She loved Sticks with all of her being. She especially loved being loved by Sticks. She made no secret of it. She relished it. Speaking of determined, Key and Bass were chewing my ear off about studio time this afternoon. "I guess Key's got enough songs for an album." "I heard. I'm not sure I'm ready." "I hear you. I'm enjoying this break. How's things with Crystal? She got you roped and tied yet?" "Not gonna happen, Sticks. Not as long as she does that." Donaldson pointed his beer bottle at Crystal, who was draped all over Barry Ashton, laughing at something he said. "You are one lucky man, Sticks." Donaldson could see Robin Matthews dancing slowly toward her husband. Donaldson could feel himself disappear as she got closer. Robin wrapped herself around Sticks, kissing him fiercely. She whispered something in his ear. Donaldson didn't hear everything she said, just enough to know what was going on. "Call me tomorrow, Sticks, when she lets you out of bed." "See you, Robin. You look great. Don't wear him out too much tonight." Donaldson winked as the couple waved and walked away, kissing. "What a 304, Crystal said as she looped her arm through Donaldson's. He was watching the lovebirds make their way through the crowd. "Give it a rest, Cries. They're married." "So, she's all over him. And you weren't crawling inside Barry's jacket a moment ago?" "At least she's crawling inside her husband's jacket." "Oh, Donnie, don't be so jealous. I need Barry. He's producing a new special next month. Don't mistake annoyance for jealousy, cries. Don't be like that, Donnie. I need that special. Donaldson looked at Crystal. Yeah, right. No, cries. You want to do the special. You want anything that will get you to New York. And what's wrong with that, Mr. Guitar Player? Not a thing, Crystal. Just lay off Robin. You are not in her league. Crystal hauled off and slapped Donaldson. Donaldson nodded. That was the final straw as far as he was concerned. He raised his bottle in salute, downed the amber liquid, and placed the empty bottle on the table beside him. I'm going to be out all day tomorrow. Be sure your stuff is gone and the key is in the mailbox by 5. With that, he turned and walked out of the party. 2 days later, in another town. Oh my God, Jesse, what are you going to do? Lindsay Noonan asked as she slid a cup of tea across the counter to her friend, Jessica Mayberry. I don't know, Lindsay. I'm still in shock. Well, yeah. I mean, what about Cassie? I could take her, of course, but I know, Lindsay. You have things you need to do. No, I couldn't burden you with Cassie. You need to get settled in Central City. The girls are going to flip out on us, you know. Yeah, I can't say that I blame them. The two ladies sat at the counter quietly, each wrapped in her thoughts. Lindsay tried to think of a way to help Jessie out. If only she had more time, she and Jennifer could take Cassie with them. The girls were as close, no closer, friends than their mothers. The divorce decree and the sale of this house left Lindsay with just enough money to make the move to Central City and try the one thing she had always wanted, to own her own fabric store. Things were too tight to include Cassie in the equation. She would only get one shot at this, and if she failed, both she and Jennifer would pay the price. Jessica's thoughts were running on a different track. She knew that Lindsay would happily sacrifice her dream for Cassie, but Jessica couldn't allow that to happen. She needed to go to Central City for another reason. She needed to see Cassie's father. Cassie's father had no clue about her. Jessica had moved away after that fateful night. Dawn moved away too. She was hurt when the letters she sent went unanswered, but a few years ago, she'd found out that Dawn never saw them. She had come to terms with her life, and now it was ending. The cancer was too far advanced, the doctor said. 2 months, maybe less, he told her when she asked how long. No way, Jenna. The women heard Janie yell as the front door burst open. The three amigas, Janie, Cassie, and Jenna stormed into the house, as only 3 14-year-olds can. Hi, Mom. The trio chorused as they hurried to Jenna's bedroom. Way, Jenna replied, pulling a picture out of the diary on her desk. It was Axel Woodson with his guitar and his sexy smile. It is him, Janie swooned, staring lovingly at the picture Jenna showed her. Axel Woodson was their heartthrob. Each one of the trio thought of him in their nightly fantasies. Wow. And you got to talk to him too. Way cool. Can you believe it? Crystal Lane dumped him. It was in the paper this morning. Yeah, what a bitch. What time is it? Damn, I wish I could stay and drool over this all night. But Mom said dinner was at 6. I can't be late again, so I better go. Bye. 10 minutes later, Jessie and Cassie left. Cassie sensed something was going on the way Lindsay hugged her mother. She walked quietly beside her mom, wondering what was up and thinking how lucky Jenna had been to meet their idol. Cassie, sit down. Honey, we have to talk, Jessie said as soon as they were back in their house. What's up, Mom? Oh God, I don't know how to tell you this, honey. Jessie couldn't help the tears that streamed down her face. She was leaving Cassie all by herself in the world. It was too much to bear. What is it, Mom? Cassie was really nervous now. She'd only seen her mom cry twice, when each of her grandparents died. They didn't have any other family. She didn't know her father, and she knew that he didn't know about her. Jessie hugged her daughter to her, still in tears. I wish I didn't have to tell you this, baby. She pulled back and held Cassie's hands in hers. You know I haven't felt well lately. Cassie nodded. Well, Dr. Jenkins got the test results back today. I have liver cancer, very advanced and inoperable. Oh God. The tears rolled down her face as she shook and held her only child in a death grip. Cassie wasn't sure what this meant, but she knew that cancer and inoperable were a bad combination. Surely it didn't mean. The pair sat there on their couch in tears for a while. Jessica finally calmed down enough to let go of her daughter. Cassie tried to smile as her mother wiped a tear off her cheek. I am dying, Cassie. The doctor says 2 months, maybe less. No, you can't. I know. Baby, Jessica tried to comfort her daughter. After another bout of tearful sobs, the two separated. Cassie took a deep breath. What is going to happen to me? I mean, Grandma and Grandpa are gone. I don't have aunts and uncles. Jenna and her mom are moving next week. I know, baby. It's a long shot, but I want to contact your father. I thought you didn't know where he was. Well, I might. Like I said, it's a long shot. He may not even remember me, if it is him. I don't know what else to do. Lindsay can't take you. She and Jenna have enough on their plate. I can't ask them to take this burden too. I will, if this doesn't work. What about Janie's family? Would you really want to live with Mr. Perkins? I thought you didn't like the way he looked at you three. Yeah, that would be bad. If I had no other choices, the Perkins would do, but I think there are better options. What if he doesn't want me? We'll cross that bridge when we get there, okay? Cassie nodded. She collapsed into her mother's arms. Jessica finally got Cassie to bed. The girl had taken things as well as could be expected. Cassie was a bright girl, she knew. She watched from the bedroom door as her daughter slept. Jessica could see Dawn's influence in her. Her hair, her facial features, and her long fingers all pointed to him. God help us if it's not him, and God help him if it is. The picture in the paper this morning wasn't very flattering, but it was unmistakably him. Now all I have to do is find him, Jessica thought as she slowly closed the door and headed out to the kitchen. With a sigh, she sat in front of the computer and watched as it booted up. She knew where he was yesterday. Maybe he has a house there. Maybe she could even find out the address. And maybe cows can fly, she thought to herself. 2 minutes later, she stared at the screen. It couldn't be this easy. There it was, on the screen, his name and address. We're going with you, Lindsay, she said as the two women sat at the counter again. Boxes filled the room around them. They had been packing all day. Why? There's nothing for you in Central City. Her father is there. Lindsay looked at her friend as if she had two heads. I didn't know you knew where her father was. I didn't until yesterday. She showed her friend the picture from the entertainment section. Are you sure? I think so. That's Don aged 15 years or so. The last name's the same. The face is close. It's got to be him. The girls will absolutely freak. You can't tell them. I don't even know if he will remember me. Or if he'll believe you. There's that. It's a long shot, Jessie. But it's the only shot, Lindsay. I know you'd take her in, but I can't ask you to sacrifice your dream if there's another way. I've got to try and I have to do it while I still can. And if you can't get past his bodyguards and managers, I have to get past them. Lindsay looked at her friend. The fire in her brown eyes was undeniable. Lindsay frowned, but nodded. Okay, how do we handle it? We're going to Central City to help you get started. I quit yesterday. The girls are out of school for another 2 months. If I can't make other arrangements, in a month, I make you Cassie's guardian and ride off into the sunset. Only if this is a Hollywood movie. If it is, Hitchcock wrote it. Yeah, no doubt. 2 more days have passed. What a day, Donaldson sighed, pulling his black pickup into his driveway. He couldn't believe the stuff Keyes came up with this time. It was trite schlock, and he told them so in no uncertain terms. Barry Rift had never fought in the studio before. This one was a doozy. Keyes was right about 2 things. The record company wasn't going to wait forever, and Donaldson had nothing better for them to play. There was no way his name was going on an album with that schlock. Donaldson was proud of his music. The first 3 albums had been hugely successful and well-written. Their last album wasn't. They needed something good, or they were going to disappear. Lately, he'd been wondering if disappearing was a bad thing. Barry Rift had a good run. 13 years was a long time for a rock and roll band. Not many other bands could claim 9 years of headlining tours and 4 platinum albums. At least he was home now. He needed some time to think things through. So why was there a woman sitting on his porch? He stopped the pickup at the garage door and hurried out of it. He was not in the mood for someone selling something, especially if she were selling herself. Hey, lady. This is private property. You can't be here. The woman stood. She looked good in her tight blue jeans and white blouse. She reached down and pulled her purse over her shoulder. I am sorry to bother you, Mr. Woodson, but if I could just have a couple minutes of your time. Look, lady, whatever you're selling, I'm not interested. I'm not selling anything. Jessica put her hands on her hips. I promise. Yeah, right, Donaldson muttered. Look a mess. Jessica Mayberry. Donaldson stopped short. Then you do remember my name at least. Donaldson stared at her. It couldn't be, not after all these years. The memories and heart aches flooded through him. He continued staring as she closed the distance between them. Her eyes were the same eyes he still dreamed about. They were the inspiration for some of his best music. My God, it is her. Jessie? What? Where? How? Gently, Jessica pushed Donaldson's mouth shut and put her arms around him. When he hugged her back, everything felt so right. Donaldson couldn't believe it. It was a dream. He hugged this woman tightly. He wasn't going to let go this time. And then he felt her shake and the tears soaking his shirt. He couldn't think of a thing to say, so he just gently nudged Jessie toward his front door. In no time, they were seated on his couch. I can't believe it's you, Jessie. It's been forever. I gave up ever hearing from you or about you. I'm sorry, Dawn, but I have nowhere else to go with this, Jessie said, wiping her tears up with a tissue from her purse. Donaldson started to say something. She put her finger on his lips. Let me say this, she began. I've been rehearsing it in my mind since I got here. I'm not sure I can get through it all, but let me try. Then you can ask questions. Okay. She gently kept her finger on his lips, so he simply nodded. He watched as she took a deep breath. She looked different than he remembered, older, more composed, yet familiar. In his mind, he drifted back to that day, 15 years ago. They had been so close, making promises they believed would last forever. It had felt like the beginning of something unbreakable. Jessica stood up and walked to the back door, staring out at the fading daylight. It all started that day, she said softly. I was so happy when I got home. And then everything fell apart. Granny died. We were moving the next day without warning, without a chance to say goodbye. I didn't even have a way to contact you. As soon as we got to Hillside, I wrote you. I wrote every day, but you never answered. It broke my heart. I thought the forever we promised had ended before it even began. I didn't find out until a few years ago that you had moved away the next week. I wrote you too, Donaldson said hoarsely, feeling that old heartache rise all over again. I know. I actually found one at the dead letter office. I couldn't believe it, but it was too late. And I had no way of finding you then. You see, 6 weeks after we moved, I still hadn't had a period. I was pregnant. Donaldson gasped. Yes, you have a daughter, Cassie. Mama and Papa tried to get me to give her up, but I couldn't. I worked hard, and I made a life for the two of us. Mama and Papa helped. Papa even tried to find you. After a couple of years, we stopped trying. Cassie grew up knowing she had a father, but that he didn't know about her. I explained it as best I could. I don't think she felt cheated until Papa died 2 years ago. And then Mama went last year. We were still fine. I tried several times over the years to find you. It was ironic because you were under my nose all the time these last few years. Jessica was pacing now. You see, Cassie and her friends adore you. They have every one of your CDs. They've even been to 2 concerts. But I was clueless. I never knew that Axel Woodson was you. And the pictures never looked like you. It didn't click until last week when your picture was in the paper. I'd seen that look once before when Tommy Johnson tried to pull my shirt off at the picnic. Donaldson remembered that day. Tommy was a drunk, even at 17. Jessica finally stopped pacing and sat down next to Donaldson. I don't want to burden you with Cassie, Don, but I have no choice. I have liver cancer. Jessica stopped and grabbed Donaldson's hand. She looked up to see the tears streaming down his cheeks. Donaldson took a deep breath. How long? He croaked. 2 months or less. It wasn't fair. I just found you again, his heart said. I have a child. What do I do? A tornado of thoughts swirled in his mind. I know it's a lot to process, Don. I wish. Jessica didn't get a chance to finish. She was pulled off her seat into his lap. Donaldson wrapped his arms around her and held her to him. They sat there like that, just holding on tight for a long time. Donaldson sat there rocking her in his arms, repeating softly, I'm so sorry. Jessica finally sat up. She had cried all she was going to cry about this. She caressed his jaw and stared into his damp eyes. Don't feel sorry for me, Don. I know none of this is your fault. I forgave you long ago for the hurt you inadvertently caused. Now, I just need to know if you can care for Cassie. She has no one. We have some friends, but you are her only family now. I need to know that she will be cared for before I go. Yes, 1,000 times yes, Jessie. How could there be a doubt? I could never turn my back on our child. The question shook Donaldson out of his reverie. What about you, Jessie? Is there anything I can do for you? I'll get the best doctors. I can. Jessica sighed. I wish. But no, Don, there is nothing you can do for me but love my daughter. Where is she? When can I meet her? Do you have a place to stay? You will stay here. I can't undo the last 15 years, but I can at least try to make your last months here as comfortable as possible. I don't know, Don. I don't want to be a burden on anyone. Not another word, Jessica Mayberry. You will not be a burden. I never stopped loving you. If I'm honest with myself, you are the reason I never married. I never found a woman who could replace you in my heart. A melodic tune chimed up from Jessica's purse. Jessica pulled herself from Donaldson's arms and pulled her cell phone out of the purse. I'm fine, Lindsay. Yes, and yes. We were just talking about that. Could you bring her here? Yes, bring Jenna too. Okay, see you in a few. She turned to Donaldson. That was my friend Lindsay. She brought me here. She is bringing our daughters here in a few. You've already met Jenna. You signed a picture for her at the airport a week ago. They continued to talk as they waited for Lindsay, Cassie, and Jenna. Donaldson wanted to shout to the heavens and at the same time curse them. His heart alternately swelled and broke. To find his Jessie now, when she has such a short time to live, was almost too much. Add in a daughter that he never knew. It was unreal. Hollywood couldn't write scripts like this. Jessica could see the storms rolling across Donaldson's face. Her heart remembered this man. She could feel the things she never thought she would feel again. And then he was in front of her. He stopped and put his hands on her hips, staring into her eyes, looking for a sign. He watched as her eyes fluttered closed and her head tipped. He felt himself drawn and then their lips touched. All of the heartache and pain drained out of him as the embers of his passion for her burst into flame. The kiss deepened as her hands curled around his neck. Mom. Neither of them had heard the door open or even the sound of Lindsay's car coming up the driveway. The world had ceased to exist for them. And now with a word, Cassie pulled them back to reality. Oh my God. Jenna shrieked as Donaldson released Jessica's lips and turned to see the two teenagers and the mother behind them. Jenna and Lindsay he recognized from the airport. That meant the beautiful brunette was his daughter. He hurried to her and swept her into his arms. Jenna was speechless as she watched her idol approach her friend. Cassie's mouth worked, but no sounds came out. And then she felt herself swept into a hug that felt so dizzyingly perfect. Donaldson could not contain himself as he pulled her to him. "Oh, Cassie, my sweet Cassie." Tears came unbidden to his eyes. He could feel her heart hammer in her chest as he squeezed her to him. Lindsay stood at the doorway taking it all in, from the happily dazed look on Jessica's face as she watched Donaldson and her daughter to the total shock on Jenna's face. Cassie clung to her father for dear life as he did to her. Donaldson finally set Cassie back down on the floor and knelt before her. "I didn't know, Cassie, or I would have been there. I'm so happy to finally meet you. Can you forgive me?" Cassie stared at him as if it were a dream. Jessica made her way to her daughter's side. "It's true, Cassie. Don is your father. We went to high school together in Grant City. We had one beautiful night together and both moved away. He never knew. I never realized that he was my Don." Donaldson smiled and stood. "I know it's a lot for you to process, Cassie. It's a lot for all of us to process." He put his arm around Jessica. Don turned to Lindsay and held out his hand. "We weren't properly introduced at the airport. I'm Donaldson Woodson and you must be Lindsay." Lindsay smiled and nodded as she gripped his hand. "That would be me." He turned to Jenna. "If I had known you were my daughter's best friend, Jenna, I would have given you something better than an autographed photo." Jenna smiled. When Donaldson held his hand out to her, she cautiously shook it. Donaldson stood and surveyed the women around him. "I don't know about all of you, but I could use a drink and something to eat. Pizza? Romano's delivers." Lindsay nodded. Jessica smiled and looped her arm in his. Both girls shrugged, still overwhelmed. "Okay, then," Donaldson replied, feeling the need to take charge and do something for the first time in a long while. He kissed Jessica's forehead and pulled his cell phone out. 3 large special pizzas were on their way in no time. Donaldson guided to the table in his kitchen. Lindsay took the 2 teenagers with her when she left. It was generally agreed that Jessica and Donaldson had a number of things to discuss, and they were in the way. Jessica shooed them all away with a smile and a promise that they could come back in the morning and the girls could stay with her and Donaldson while Lindsay got started on her dream, a fabric store named A Stitch in Time. Donaldson cleaned up the kitchen, tossing the empty pizza boxes in the trash and putting glasses in the dishwasher. When he finished, he walked out onto the deck. He paused for a moment to look at Jessica. She stood staring out into the night sky with her back to him. He admired the slim curves of her body. His eyes were drawn to the seat of her jeans. The tight fabric accentuated the extra curves she'd gained as a woman. He remembered the feel of her and felt the longing to hold her in his arms as strongly as he had 15 years ago. He walked slowly to stand behind her and placed his hands on the waistband of her jeans. She leaned back against him. He reveled in the feel of her back against his chest. "It's so beautiful here, Dawn. I could stare at the sky forever. No star will ever shine as brightly as they do when you are here," he said earnestly. It's been a long time since anyone used a line like that on me. I think about 16 years and he was just trying to get in my pants." "As I recall, he succeeded," Donaldson said, nuzzling her ear. "Yes, he did," she replied. "Oh boy, did he ever succeed. I saw so many shooting stars that night. I was so sure it was going to be like that forever like we promised." Donaldson held her tight, sensing that that was what she needed from him at that moment. He needed more, but forced those thoughts back to the back of his mind. Tonight, and all of the nights until she was gone would be for her. Whatever she needed from him, he would try to deliver. "I dreamed of standing in a place like this with you, Dawn. I think I knew that someday it would happen. I just wish." She fell silent. "What? I may not be a genie, but I will do my best to grant your wish, Jess." She turned in his arms until she faced him, reaching up to put her hands on his shoulders. It felt right holding her like this, staring into her eyes. Jessica stared back. She saw more than she had ever hoped for. Emotions she had buried for 15 years surged to the surface, feelings she thought were long forgotten. She closed her eyes, letting the moment wash over her. Her chest tightened as the depth of her longing returned, overwhelming her. She knew what she wanted, what she needed to reconnect with the one who had once meant so much to her. "Stay with me, Dawn," she whispered softly. "Let's find what we lost, what we still carry inside." Donaldson leaned down and silenced her with a kiss. It was not gentle or fleeting, it was urgent, filled with unspoken words. Her confession was all he needed. With determined strength, he lifted her into his arms and carried her to the bed. They clung to each other, old barriers falling away, finding comfort in closeness. The emotional weight of the years melted between them as they held one another tightly. Finally, with the exhaustion of the day settling over them, they drifted into sleep, their breathing slowing in unison. The next morning, sunlight gently warmed Jessica's face. She awoke in the large bed, alone, momentarily wondering if it had all been a dream. Pushing the covers back, she noticed a trail of clothes leading toward the door, a quiet reminder that the night before had been very real. She slipped on an oversized t-shirt and padded out of the room. After a brief stop in the bathroom, she followed the faint sounds of a guitar being softly strummed. The melody and whispered words guided her past the kitchen and toward an open door leading to the basement. Forever, forever, the gentle singing called to her, drawing her down the stairs toward the familiar comfort of the music. She stopped in the doorway, watching as Donaldson sat on a stool with a guitar balanced on his knee. He was picking a soft tune and humming into a microphone. Over and over he picked, adding a word or a phrase, oblivious to her presence. She smiled as she watched him. His hair was still tousled from sleep, his feet bare. He sat with his guitar, eyes closed, smiling as he played and sang. His focus on the music was evident, his passion clear in every note. The melody flowed through the room, and she listened intently, her heart stirred by the warmth of the moment. She could see the effort in his hands, and it reminded her of times long past, when life felt simpler, when warmth and connection came easily. Baby, forever, he whispered softly, his voice trailing off as he stopped strumming. He opened his eyes and set the guitar down, not realizing she had entered. Turning away, he turned off the tape machine, his mind still lingering on the tune. He hadn't expected her presence, but when he felt her arms slip around him from behind, his smile returned. "Good morning, Jessie," he said, turning to face her and pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I woke up and you were gone," she said quietly, a trace of concern in her voice. "Sorry," he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I woke up around 4 with that tune running through my head. It hasn't happened in a while, and I needed to record it before I forgot." "I like it," she said, content in the comfort of his arms. "It's still a bit rough, but it has possibilities. Kind of like your face, Dawn," she teased, a playful smile on her lips. "Oh really?" He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, and I think we need to explore some of those possibilities." "Need?" he asked, laughing. "Okay, I need," she admitted with a grin. "I was hoping you did, too." Donaldson chuckled and leaned down to kiss her, his hands moving to guide her gently. They shared a quiet, intimate moment, the connection between them deepening in their simple closeness. They both paused, taking a moment to look at each other before heading off for breakfast and a quiet morning together, as their life continued to unfold. Later, 2 friends, Jenna and Cassie, stood in front of Donaldson's house, both in awe of the situation. "I can't believe it," Jenna said, her voice filled with excitement. "For years, we've dreamed about meeting Axel Woodson, and now he's your dad." "I know," Cassie responded, still in shock. "I always knew I had a dad, but I never thought I'd actually meet him. And now here he is." Jenna hugged her friend tightly. "It's going to be okay. No matter what happens, you still have me and Mom. We're here for you." Cassie looked uncertain, her emotions catching up with her. "But what if it isn't okay? What if we don't get along? What if?" Her voice faltered as she let herself feel the weight of everything. Jenna held her tighter. "He's a good guy, Cassie. And look at this place. Things will work out. You're not alone in this. Promise me you'll always remember that." "Promise," Cassie whispered, leaning into her friend as the 2 of them sat together, finding comfort in each other's presence as they faced an uncertain but hopeful future. For a couple of weeks, it was like Hollywood magic. Don couldn't believe his good fortune. His time with Jessie was just as special as it had been so many years before. Cassie was wary at first, but she quickly warmed to him. Now it was as if they had been together the whole time. Even his songwriting had returned. His life had focused once again. Barry Rift returned to the studio, and even Keys was enthused by the new songs Don was writing. With the new songs, Don was moving the group in a different direction from their last CD. The sound was much closer to their first CD. Don watched through the glass as they played. Cassie, Jenna, and Robin Matthews were bopping along with the newest song. Styx was hamming it up as he added percussion fills here and there. Keys sang a harmony as Don overdubbed a quick solo. Life was good. The Gibson sang to him as his fingers caressed her neck, much like Jessie's passion song the night before. The song ended and Styx hooped. "Perfect." Don hauled the axle off his shoulder and set it down on the stand next to the studio amp. "One more take on the solo?" the engineer said into his mic. "We're done," Don replied. "Axel," Keys started. "We're done. But it needs polish," Keys said. The engineer nodded behind the glass. "No way," Styx butted in. Bass nodded and opened the door to the soundproof room. "Mix it and press me a copy," Don told the engineer. "I think we're ready to send it to Hatfield." "I don't know, Axel." I think we need to add your eyes to it. No. Come on, Axel. It's as good as forever, or a heart knows. Don stared at Keys. Keys was serious. He turned and looked at Sticks, who shrugged. Don took a deep breath and turned to the engineer. Add your eyes to the CD and press it. Don dropped Jenna off at Lisa's shop, but not before extracting a promise that Jenna would badger her mother into driving out to his house after the shop closed. He had something in mind, and he wanted Lisa there. Cassie watched him as he drove silently down the streets. Forever is about Mom, isn't it? Yes, Don admitted. So we're lost without you and love's sweet pain. Yes. It's not fair. What's not? You and Mom. I mean, we just found you, and soon Mom's going to leave. Life isn't about fair, Cassie. I know. Don turned into a Dairy Queen parking lot and stopped the truck. We're going to get through this together, Cassie. You and I. I wish I could turn back the clock and be there for both of you. But that isn't going to happen either. But you need to believe me. I love you. I will be here for you as long as I can be. I wish I could promise forever, but you know that's just not possible. Don could see the tears in Cassie's eyes. His heart ached for the pain his daughter had borne so well. Now, Don said, reaching over and brushing a tear off Cassie's cheek. I have something to ask you. Well, two things, I guess. Oh, I want to ask your mother to marry me, if that's all right with you. Okay. And I want to adopt you, make you my daughter legally. Is that okay? Cassie nodded. Now let's keep that to ourselves for a bit, okay? Cassie smiled. You want Lisa and Jenna there when you ask Mom. And Sticks and Robin. They are coming for dinner. Nobody else knows. Just you and me. I could be bribed to keep it to myself. That's my girl, Don chuckled. Oreo Blizzard? Deal. Don ushered Cassie into the Dairy Queen, and they sat like any other father and daughter sharing an afternoon together. Jessie was glad Don had taken the girls with him to the studio again. She was tired, even after sleeping past noon. She vaguely remembered Don kissing her cheek when he got out of bed. The pain was worse today. Tomorrow she needed to see the doctor again. The message light was blinking on the answering machine, and Jessie idly pushed the button as she poured herself a glass of juice. Jessie, call me when you get this. I love you. She dialed Don's cell phone. Hi, Jessie. Don's voice purred into her ear. How are you feeling today? Okay, Jessie lied. Are you up to company for dinner? I guess that depends on who the company is. Sticks and Robin, Lindsay and the girls. That's fine. Do I need to get something started? No, relax. Cassie and I will be home soon. Okay, Don. I'll grab a shower and see you when you get back. Don frowned as he closed the cell phone. What's wrong, Dad? Cassie asked, concerned. I'm not sure Jessie's feeling very well today. I wonder if I should cancel dinner. No. Cassie's eyes blazed. You can't. You have to ask her. And the sooner the better. Or else it will be too late. Don looked at his daughter and realized she was probably right. Happy days were drawing to a close. Jessie had been getting more and more tired each day. He was sure she was in pain. She put up a brave front, but he could see it in her eyes. Don nodded, and he and Cassie hurried back to the house. Jessie smiled as she listened to the chaos around her. Don's friend Sticks was telling stories about life on the road. Cassie and Jenna were watching him intently. She watched as Sticks's wife, Robin, tried to keep control of her 3 boys. It was just what she needed. She felt comfortable now. Cassie had a place to live, a place filled with love and affection. Her pain would be bearable knowing this. Lindsay was watching her intently from across the table. Jessie smiled. I'm okay, Lindsay, she said. Everything will be okay. Suddenly Don banged his fork on his nearly empty bottle of beer. Silence reigned as everyone turned to look at Don. He cleared his throat and stood. I asked you all here for a special reason, he said as he walked around the table toward Jessie. He patted Cassie's shoulder as he passed, and she smiled. He stopped when he reached Jessie's side. Don. He gently turned her chair and then knelt in front of her, taking her right hand in his left. I am here tonight to right a great wrong that was done over 15 years ago. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. Jessica Mayberry, I love you. I want to spend the rest of our lives together. Marry me? Oh my God. Did he just ask me to marry him? The world dipped and spun. Not now. Please, she thought as she tried to will the dizziness away. I don't know what to say, Don. Say yes. But you know it would only be for a month or 2. It will be for the rest of our lives. Jessie paused and looked into his eyes. He really wanted this. With a deep breath, she stood and pulled gently on his hand. When he stood as well, she looked around the table. We need to talk about this. We'll be right back. Still holding his hand, Jessie gently pulled him out onto the deck. I don't know about this, Don. I haven't been feeling well. I don't know if I can be your wife much longer. I don't want to go another day without you. It's what we would have done 15 years ago had we not moved away from each other. It also makes it easier for me to adopt Cassie. I love you, Jessica Mayberry. I want to marry you. I love you too, Don. But I don't think getting married is fair to you. We both know I'm dying. Getting married won't change that. I'm perfectly happy with what we have now. Well, I'm not. I want to show the world that I have a wife and a daughter, not just an old friend and a ward. I want to put things the way they should have been for the past 15 years. Jessica looked into his eyes. Don still held her hand in his. With his right hand, he moved the ring to her finger. He held her eyes to his as he slid the sparkling diamond farther and farther onto her finger. You will make me the happiest man alive, Jessie. A tear rolled down her cheek as she looked down to her hand. It was as it should have been, as it always was in her dreams. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and then pulled his head down to hers. They could both taste her tears of happiness as their lips joined. She said yes. Cassie shrieked behind them. Jenna and Cassie bounced together as they hurried to hug the newly engaged couple. Styx clapped Dawn on the back. Robin and Lindsay hugged Jessie. When are we going to do this? Jessie asked. As soon as we can arrange it, Dawn replied. Jessie nodded. 2 days later, with Styx, Robin, Lindsay, and the girls as witnesses, Dawn and Jessie stood before a judge and became man and wife. The next day, Dawn was stretched out on the couch cuddling with a very tired and achy Jessie. Dawn was sort of watching the noon news. In local entertainment news, Central City's most musical bachelor, Axel Woodson, got married yesterday in a civil service to Jessica Mayberry. There was no comment from Woodson's agent. The camera turned to Crystal Lane in time to see the sour look on her face. She recovered quickly and went on with the next story. Boy, they learn things fast in this town. Dawn, Jessie commented. Yeah, I guess I should have scheduled a press conference, Dawn replied a little too sarcastically. Jessie groaned. The phone rang, and Dawn let the machine answer it. You a-hole, Crystal Lane's voice screamed through the phone. I have never been so embarrassed in my life. I mean, finding out my boyfriend was married on my own news program. This is a new low for you, Axelhole. You better call me back today, or the dirt will start sticking to you and your 304. There was an audible clunk as she slammed the phone down. I thought she broke up with you before I got here, Jessie said, shaking her head. I broke up with her. She spun things her way the next day. I walked out of a party after telling her to pack up and move out. You saw the photo of me saluting her with my beer bottle. I really need to thank her. If she hadn't pissed you off, I might not have ever found you. Dawn sighed. I guess I should call her back. Jessie nodded. What do you want, Crystal? Dawn said into the phone. Donnie, you a-hole. You embarrassed me big time. Crystal, we haven't split up a month ago. I didn't invite any of my other ex-girlfriends to the wedding either. No media were invited. It was a quiet civil service. Why the cover-up, Donnie? Is she a dog? Oh, let me guess. You got her pregnant. Well, yes, but that was 15 years ago. Crystal was quiet for a moment. I want an interview. This week, an exclusive with you and the dumb. I don't know, Crystal. You're not exactly an impartial interviewer. And Jessie's not a public person. She is now. She married you, and you're a local celebrity. I don't like it. I don't care. I want the interview to show on tomorrow's noon news. We are not coming to the studio. You want the interview. You show up here, this afternoon, between 4 and 5. You're gone by 6. Deal. Oh, and Crystal, you and one cameraman only, no one else. Dawn ushered Crystal, her cameraman, and her makeup person out to the deck. I don't know, Donnie. I think it would be better inside, Crystal whined. The cameraman looked at the setup and nodded. 3 chairs were set up in a shaded area. A table separated one chair from the other 2. He set up his camera and then said, Looks good. We can get a good shot, and the audio is good. The door slid open, and Jessie walked gingerly through the door. She looked tired, but she smiled. You must buy Crystal Lane. I'm Jessica Woodson, she said as she held out her hand. Crystal nodded. Why don't you sit here on the end? We'll put Donnie between us. Jessie shrugged and sat. Drinks anyone? Dawn asked. Water, sweetie, Jessie said softly. Diet Coke, Crystal replied. The cameraman and makeup girl both shook their heads. You don't look well, Jennifer, Crystal said, putting on her newswoman smile. Jessica, I'm tired. Donnie been keeping you up late? Could be, Jessie replied, noting the venom in Crystal's voice. You groupies talk a good game, but it takes a special woman to keep up with Donnie. Jessie's not a groupie, Crystal, and she's a very special woman, Dawn replied, setting their drinks down. Crystal smiled, and the makeup girl stepped back behind the camera. The cameraman nodded. I'm here with Axel Woodson and his new wife, Jessica. Crystal smiled to the camera and paused while the cameraman turned the camera toward Jessie and Dawn. This marriage thing happened pretty fast, Axel. Have you known Jessica long? We met almost 16 years ago, Crystal. We dated in high school. We both moved away from Grant City and lost track of one another. Jessie added, I guess we have you to thank, Crystal. If you hadn't done something to make Don mad at that party a month ago, I would never have known that my Don was Axel Woodson. Crystal looked at Jessie for a moment. You sure wasted no time ensnaring him again. Don could see Jessie bristle. He knew that was what Crystal wanted. We decided we wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. So we got married the other day. It would have happened a long time ago if circumstances had been different. Why the hurry? Crystal probed, smelling some dirt. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I didn't know there was a time requirement. But 15 years does seem like long enough to wait, Dawn replied. So will this interfere with Berry Rift? I hear you guys are struggling to put together a new CD. Actually, Crystal, we finished the CD the day before the wedding. It was a struggle, but with Jesse here to inspire me, the music just poured out. So we can expect the CD out soon. Then, we are planning an October release date. And a tour? Probably. Nothing is set up yet. We are working on something here in Central City. I can't say any more about that, but stay tuned. There should be some news in a day or two. Jesse groaned. The cameraman shifted as she collapsed and slid out of the chair. Jesse. Dawn knelt beside her. With a frown, he called for an ambulance. And then he called her doctor. This stays off the news, Crystal. No way, Donnie. Crystal turned to her cameraman. Keep filming. We'll add voiceover in the studio. Get off my property, Crystal, now. Dawn was angrier than Crystal had ever seen him. I want that tape and I want it now, or my lawyers will have you so tied up in red tape that you can't even take a piss. I don't think so, Donnie. Come on, Dean. We'll film from the street. After Crystal left, Dawn called Lindsay. Luckily, Cassie and Jenna were with Lindsay that day. Lindsay said they would meet him at the hospital after she closed the shop that evening. The ambulance came and rushed them off to the hospital. Dawn paced back and forth outside the ICU. The doctor said Jesse was stable. She was asleep. Emotions raced through Dawn. He was angry with Crystal. He was mad at himself for letting Crystal maneuver him into the interview. He was worried about Jesse. This was obviously the beginning of the end. More than anything, his heart was sad. His time with Jesse was drawing to a close. He felt bad for Cassie and hoped that he would be enough family for her. His cell phone chirped, interrupting his thoughts. Axel, it's me, Charlie. Hi, Sticks. Is Jessica okay? How did you know about Jesse? It's all over the news. Crystal's been on every 15 minutes with your interview and Jessica's collapse. She's been speculating all kinds of things. Pregnancy, narcotics, you name it. I'll kill her. Easy, Axel. Focus on Jessica. How is she? Not good, Sticks. The doctors have her sedated and stabilized. They think the stress of the interview was too much. It's my fault. She's been so tired and in so much pain lately. We'll be there as soon as Robin's sister gets here. Thanks, Sticks. You and Robin are the best. Mr. Woodson, a nurse said when Dawn closed his cell phone. Your wife is awake now. She's asking for you. Dawn hurried into her room. Several nurses were fussing with things, but Dawn ignored them and sat down next to Jesse. How are you, Jesse? I'm really tired, Dawn. I love you. I always loved you. I need you to know that in case I can't ever say it again. I'll be with you, Jesse. I'm not leaving. I love you. Dawn kissed her. Jesse drifted off to sleep. For 2 days, Jesse drifted in and out of consciousness. Dawn never left her side except to go to the bathroom. Sticks, Robin and Lindsay made sure that Cassie was there as much as she wanted to be. The mood was somber. Everyone knew that Jesse's time drew near. Sticks brought some fresh clothes for Dawn. Go change. Splash some water on your face. You look like hell. I'll stay with Jesse. If anything comes up, I'll call you right away. Dawn nodded and headed to the locker room. He had been showering and changing in the doctor's locker room for 2 days now. The shower felt terrific. Dawn folded his clothes back up and hurried back up to Jesse's room. Dawn drifted off to sleep beside Jesse's bed that evening. It had been a long 3 days. Crystal and the local news media continued to keep them in the news, and that infuriated Dawn. Morty, his agent, kept hounding him to set up a press conference. Keys and Morty were hounding him about the concert he was trying to set up in Central City. Dawn knew they were mostly interested in the money side of the concert, and he wondered how they would take it when they found out it was going to be a charity event. Dawn didn't sleep well with those thoughts and the pain of losing Jesse weighing on him. His eyes burst open when he felt Jesse squeeze his hand. Dawn. Her hoarse whisper was barely audible. Jesse, are you okay? Do you want me to call the nurse? No, Dawn. It's too late for that. Tell Cassie I love her. Take care of her for me. I will. I know. Take care of yourself too. Don't pine for me. Find someone who will love you and help you care for Cassie. I don't want to think about that right now. Promise me, Dawn. Don't go into that shell. For us, please. I'll try, Jesse. I love you, Dawn. Please be happy. Now kiss me. Dawn stood up and leaned down. He felt Jesse's other hand reach weakly behind his head. Their lips joined, and he closed his eyes. He could feel the life drain out of her as she kissed him. Her hand went slack and fell to her side. He released her lips and looked down. Jesse was gone. He could hear the alarms around him. Be at peace, Jesse. I love you. I always will, he whispered. The nurse rushed in, followed by the doctor. They started to try to revive her. Let her rest in peace, Dawn said softly. The doctor nodded and stepped back, resting his hand on Dawn's shoulder. When morning came, Lindsay and the girls found him sitting in a chair in the hall outside her room asleep. Cassie could see instantly that her mother was gone. She started crying and ran for him. Don woke as she collided into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her. Cassie sobbed into his shoulder. Lindsay stood watching, holding onto her daughter's hand tightly. Jesse passed away a couple hours ago, Don said quietly. He eased Cassie off his shoulder and put his finger under her chin, raising it so he could look into her eyes. Her last thoughts were of you, Cassie. She said to tell you she loved you. Cassie buried herself in his shoulder again. This time, Lindsay and Jenna both came forward and hugged their friends. After a bit, Don shifted Cassie so that she was in the seat next to him. Jenna pulled Cassie to her, and the two friends cried on each other's shoulders. Don wiped his eyes and looked at Lindsay. Watch the girls for me, please. There are some things I need to take care of, and then we can get out of here. Lindsay nodded. Don walked down the hallway away from the girls. He called Styx first, and then Morty. Styx to meet them at his house, Morty to set up a press conference. Then he walked back to the girls. After an hour, Don stood. It's time to go home. Lindsay nodded and Jenna and Cassie stood. When they reached the front entrance of the hospital, Don turned. I have to talk to the media for a moment before we can go. I would like the three of you to stand behind me. Don't say anything to them. I have some carefully chosen words for them, and then we'll get in Lindsay's car and go back to the house. Okay. They nodded, and then Don reached out and grasped Cassie's hand and Lindsay's hand. Jenna grabbed Cassie's other hand, and they walked out the door toward a sea of cameras. Don paused at the curb and took a deep breath. I have a brief statement. There will be no questions answered. He paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and then spoke again. At 3 o'clock this morning, my wife, Jessica Woodson, died of complications from liver cancer. It was not unexpected, and we treasured the time we shared together. Please respect my family and friends in our time of grief. Don't hound them. Don't even approach them. When the time is right, Axel Woodson and Barry Rift will return to the spotlight like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Until then, leave us in peace to mourn for a beautiful life ended too soon. Don nodded, and the foursome walked through the sea of cameras. People shouted questions, but parted to allow them through. Lindsay reached into her purse and pushed the button to unlock the car. She turned and handed Don the keys. I don't think I can drive right now, she said. Don nodded and drove them to his house. Styx was there when they arrived at his house. I'm sorry, Don. She was a beautiful person. Thanks. I pulled the phone cords. Give me your cell phone. Either Robin or Morty, or I will take all the calls. Is there anything else we can do? No. Thanks, Charlie, Don said, handing him the phone and walking away from everyone toward the deck. Lindsay watched as he stood with his hands on the rail and stared out at the world beyond. She turned and saw that Cassie and Jenna were huddled with Robin. Styx had his hand on Robin's shoulder as she comforted the two teens. Lindsay quietly opened the door and walked out to stand beside Don. Don turned and saw the tears streaming down Lindsay's face. He gathered her to him and held her as she sobbed. They stood there gently hugging each other, mourning. After a while, Lindsay gently pushed back. Thank you for the last 6 weeks, Don. Jessie was as happy as I've ever seen her. She dreamed of a time like this with you. I'm glad you were able to make that dream come true for her. Don reached up and wiped a tear off her soft cheek. Thank you for being there for her when I couldn't, Lindsay. You were a treasured friend. I hope you and Jenna will stay in our lives. Cassie needs a good friend like Jenna. I may need one too. Lindsay smiled softly. I will always be there if you and Cassie need me, Don. But a friend is all I can be. I couldn't take Jessie's place. It would be wrong. I know someday you will find a woman who will love you like Jessie. And someday I will find my Prince Charming. You and I are family now. Jessie was like a sister, and you have become the brother I never had. Don nodded, and Lindsay laid her head back on his strong shoulder and cried for her friend. When the sun went down, Don retreated to the basement. For the next 2 days, the sad sounds of an acoustic guitar could be heard filtering up through the closed door. On the 3rd day, Cassie looked sadly at the door. Robin saw her and reached out and held her hand. Is he okay? Cassie sniffled. She was mostly cried out. He needs his time to grieve, Cassie. He will be back up when he is ready. Do you think it would be okay if I went down and gave him a hug? Robin smiled. You know, I think that might be just the right kind of thing. He's been down there long enough. It's time for him to rejoin the rest of us. Cassie nodded and walked slowly down the stairs. Don looked up when he heard someone on the stairs. He was idly picking at the strings on his acoustic guitar. His music was his solace whenever he was sad. Cassie noticed that he hadn't shaved in 2 days. She could see the tracks of his tears on his cheeks. She felt her eyes water at the sadness in his eyes. Not a word was spoken as she walked to him. He set his guitar aside, and Cassie crawled into his lap and wrapped her arms around him. Mom never forgot you. She loved you so much. Thank you for making her last days special, Dad. Cassie felt the tears roll down his cheeks as he hugged her. I'm going to miss her so much, Dad. And I know you are too. Robin said it's time for you to rejoin the rest of us. Styx said the funeral is this afternoon. Don straightened and nodded. I'm ready. He eased Cassie off his lap and holding her hand, he headed up to the main part of the house. Don wasn't surprised to see an ocean of media at the cemetery gates. He was glad the windows of the limousine were tinted. He wasn't ready to face the sharks just yet. The limousine pulled to a stop in a shady spot at the far end of the cemetery. The door opened and Don stepped out. Styx brushed his hand aside and hugged him before turning to Lindsay and the girls. Robin hugged him tightly. Sorry, man, Bass said softly as he shook Don's hand. Even Keys was subdued and genuine in his condolences. The service was quiet and short. Don dropped a single white rose onto her casket and silently wished his soulmate peace. He held Cassie as she cried again. He put his hand on Lindsay's back and then guided her softly to his other shoulder as she began to cry. He felt Jenna hug his and her mother's sides. The foursome returned to the limousine and once again parted the sea of cameras on the way back to his house. School began 2 weeks after the funeral, and Don drove Cassie to school and then returned home to work out the details of his return to the spotlight. After the first day, Cassie asked to ride the bus like the other kids. She didn't want to be treated differently. Don reluctantly agreed. And so it was that after she left for school, the members of Barry Rift and their agent, Morty Andrews, were gathered on Don's deck. Okay, Don said, breaking up the side conversations. Here's how it's going down. You know I've been working on setting something up for Barry Rift, and I've kept you all in the dark long enough. Monday, Labor Day, Barry Rift is going to headline a show at the Festival Center. 3 local bands, True Blood, Hayride, and Monster, will open the show. It will be a charity event. All proceeds go to the American Cancer Society. If I get my way, it will be an annual event. I don't do charity for anyone, he said, instantly angry. Besides, it's only 2 weeks away. We haven't rehearsed. The new stuff isn't ready for the road yet. Styx started to say something, but Don waved at him. I had a feeling that might be the case. I will cover any expenses. If you need to be paid, I'll pay it. You let Morty know how much. Don turned to Bass and Styx. Styx shook his head. No way. I'm in. I think it's a great idea. In fact, I'll pay half of whatever we have to pay. Bass nodded. I'm in. I'm not sure I want to contribute more, but I think it's a good idea too. It's about time we gave something back to the community. Morty shrugged. I can live without my percentage. The publicity alone is worth that. Okay then. We need to rehearse an hour show. Keys was unhappy. They argued for an hour before finally agreeing on an hour show that could be ready in less than 2 weeks. Don turned Morty, Styx, and Bass loose on some of the details that still needed to be worked out. Wednesday morning found Axel Woodson on the steps of the festival center, surrounded by the media. He stepped up to the microphone. Welcome. I told you Axel Woodson would be back, and here I am. I'm pleased to announce that Barry Rift, True Blood, Hayride, and Monster will be performing here on Labor Day starting at 2 p.m. in a special charity event that I hope will become an annual event here in Central City. We are going to call it the Jessica Woodson Concert for Cancer. All proceeds from the show will go to the American Cancer Society in the hopes that someday a cure will be found and no one will have to go through the suffering that my wife and family did just a short time ago. Axel, will Barry Rift be doing any songs from the new CD? A voice shouted from the back. Anything is possible, Axel replied with a twinkle in his eye. What will the admission charge be? We will be asking $1. Anything more will be graciously accepted. The crowd was abuzz. Axel couldn't hear any more direct questions, so he held his hands up and smiled. Thank you for coming. I hope to see you all here Monday afternoon. I want to do something for the show. Monday, Dad, Cassie said, walking out to deck where Don sat with his acoustic guitar, picking and thinking. Okay, any ideas? Cassie shrugged. Can you play any instruments? Sort of. Don looked at her. Cassie shifted nervously. Taking a deep breath, Cassie said, I can play guitar a little. Don thought for a moment, watching as Cassie squirmed. Okay, sit. Don disappeared into the house for a moment and returned with another acoustic guitar and a pick. He handed them to a clearly nervous Cassie. Relax, Cassie. I just want you to show me how well you can play. If you want to play with me, there will be a lot more people watching you and listening to you. Cassie nodded and strummed the strings. She took a deep breath and began to play Lost Without You. Don watched and listened for a moment and then picked up his guitar and played along. After a bit, Don began to sing the song he had written nearly 12 years before. He was surprised when a clear soprano voice joined him for the chorus. Cassie sang along, sadly harmonizing with his baritone. Don even picked a brief lead before ending the song. Wow, when were you going to tell me? I'm not that good, Dad, Cassie replied, blushing. Have you been playing long? Jenna and I have been taking lessons from a friend since I turned 14. Mom bought me a guitar for my 15th birthday, but we sold it before we came here. Don smiled. Can you play that song with me in front of 10,000 people? I don't know, Cassie replied. She straightened her back and looked Dawn directly in the eyes. But I want to try. Okay, Lost Without You is not on our set list. We need to practice this several times before the show. Cassie nodded. The festival center was filled to capacity when Dawn stepped to the microphone. Hello, Central City. Thank you for coming out and helping me. Are you ready to rock? The audience screamed its approval. Monster's drummer began to tap his sticks together. Dawn raised his hands over his head and clapped along. The crowd joined him, filling the hall with the staccato beat. Dawn looked at the band behind for a moment before stepping back to the microphone. Let's welcome Monster. Monster opened the show, rocking the auditorium with their keyboard-laced brand of music. The audience clapped and danced in their seats. Dawn tapped his foot as he watched from the side of the stage. Monster proved to be the perfect opening act for the show. Their up-tempo style grabbed the audience from the beginning. He smiled as he watched Haley Marshall spin on her chair behind his black grand piano. He made a mental note to have the thing tuned right after the show. The way the blonde banged on the keys, it was bound to be out of tune by the end of the show. When Monster finished their set, Hayride ran onto the stage. Dawn had arranged for all of the bands to use the same setup. Styx bought a new drum set just for the show and made sure that all of the drummers were comfortable with it. Dawn arranged for any and all of keyboards and amplifiers that the bands needed. Each band used its own guitars. This kept the breaks between bands down to just a few minutes. Hayride and True Blood played well, keeping the audience with them until finally, David Morris, the lead singer for True Blood, stood quietly at the microphone waiting for his band mates to leave the stage. Are you ready, Central City? Here's what we've been waiting for. Barry riffed. Styx began walking from the right side of the stage, clapping his sticks together. The audience joined him, clapping along. Bass strolled on stage and began setting a throbbing backbeat as Styx sat down. Keys bowed and sat at the piano, adding a left-handed riff. The audience roared as Axl's guitar picked up the riff. The lights went down, and a spot focused on each of the three members on stage. Keys began adding chords with his right hand. A spotlight flashed on in the middle of the arena. Axl began striding to the stage as he played. For the next hour, the band roared through a set that included 3 songs from their new CD and all of their hits from the previous ones. Dawn was breathing hard by the time they finished Your Eyes. He watched silently as Styx moved out from behind his drum kit and was joined by Bass, who had set his bass on its stand, and Keys. The trio approached the microphone that Axl used for vocals. Thank you, Styx said, grasping his 2 companions' hands and raising them in tribute to the audience. Thank you. Keys, Bass and I are leaving you in the very capable hands of my friend, Axl Woodson. A stagehand brought 2 stools out and set them by the microphone. Axl put his Gibson down and accepted his acoustic from a roadie. He seated himself down on one stool. The audience grew quiet. I want to thank you all once again for joining me here today. I'd like to thank Monster, Hayride, and True Blood for a great show. I'd also like to thank my friends from Barry Rift. I hope they weren't too rusty. The audience howled their approval. Axl strummed the guitar for a moment and then paused. I want to introduce you to a beautiful young woman who came into my life just a short time ago and has changed it in so many ways. She reminds me of her mother every time I look at her. When she heard about this show, she wanted to be a part of it, and since she has me wrapped around her little finger as every daughter should, you get to suffer. Dawn smiled and turned to the side of the stage. Cassie Woodson. The audience clapped politely as Cassie walked toward her father. Dawn could see the nervousness in her hesitant steps. When she reached the center of the stage, she sat on the other stool and accepted an acoustic guitar from the roadie. Ready? Dawn whispered. Cassie nodded. She took a deep breath and began to strum the chords to Lost Without You. The audience clapped, recognizing the tune, and when Axl joined in, the audience settled, swaying to the beat. Dawn's clear baritone sang out the verses. Cassie joined him, harmonizing the choruses. The audience joined them for the second chorus. Dawn watched with pride as Cassie began to smile, and he could see and feel her confidence grow. The song ended with a tumultuous applause. Styx ran out from the wings and swung Cassie up off the stool, hugging her. Monster, Hayride, True Blood, and the rest of Barry Rift joined them on the stage. Thank you and good night, Dawn said into the microphone. He grabbed Cassie's hand and led the performers off the stage. Dawn smiled as he looked around the huge dressing room. The 4 bands along with invited guests were milling around chatting and enjoying some post-concert refreshments. Styx and Robin were off in a corner trying to occupy the same physical space while chatting with Cassie, Jenna, and Lindsay. The guys from Hayride were almost bouncing off the walls as they visited with Bass and Keys. Part of him wished Jesse could have been here. He was proud of Cassie. Everyone he ran into told him how special that final number was. He watched as Morty was holding court on the other side of the room. probably trying to add Monster to his stable of acts. Don had been impressed with them as well, and silently hoped they would agree to let Morty get them some more publicity. Don slowly walked over and joined the circle around Styx and Robin. Lindsay turned and smiled. "You two were amazing on stage together," she gushed, hugging Cassie. "Great finish, Axel," Bass boomed as he joined the group. He hugged Cassie. "And you, young lady. Wow. I've played that song a million times, but when you sang it with your dad, I knew how it was supposed to sound." Cassie blushed and beamed. She and Jenna were vibrating with the excitement of being backstage with their idols and friends. Don shook Bass' hand and smiled. Bass had changed in the past few months, mostly for the good. Maybe there was hope for Barry Rift after all. "Aren't you a little old to be a groupie, lady?" Bass chuckled into Lindsay's ear. Don couldn't help the smile as Lindsay turned bright red. "She's no groupie," Jenna said, stepping up to Bass's chest. "She's my mother." "No way," Bass boomed. "I'm afraid so." Lindsay smiled, extending her hand. "I'm Lindsay Noonan. I'm Walt Brown. Mostly they call me Bass." Don was stunned when Bass pulled Lindsay's hand to his lips and kissed it. "I'm pleased to meet you." A resounding slap echoed through the room, stilling all conversation. "Keep your paws to yourself, a-hole," a woman's voice rang out clearly. Don turned to see Keys with his hand on his cheek. He could see the anger in Keys' eyes. Haley Marshall gave no ground as Keys stepped even closer to her. Don hustled over to try to defuse the situation. He was almost there when Keys slapped the blonde back. Don groaned as the woman rocked to the side. His handprint was visible on her cheek. Don stepped between them, roughly pushing Keys back. "Back off, John," Don hissed. "But out, Axel," Keys hissed back. "The lady and I were negotiating our sleeping arrangements." "You." Haley fumed behind Don. A motion of Don's hand cut off the rest of her comment. "I think Miss Marshall made herself abundantly clear," Don said, keeping his voice calm, but showing his irritation with the antics of his bandmate. Keys poked a finger in Don's chest. "This isn't over, Axel. I'm tired of you getting in my way." Don smiled. "We'll talk on Saturday before rehearsal." Keys nodded and stormed out. "I'm sorry, Miss Marshall. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Haley said, gritting her teeth. "I could have handled him." Don smiled. "I'm sure you could have. I apologize if I stepped on your toes. I'm just sorry I didn't get here in time to keep him from slapping you." "I'll live." "You put on a hell of a show tonight," Don said, trying to steer the conversation away from Keys' behavior. Everyone else turned back to their conversations. Don saw Keys shoot him a look as he left the room. Friday night found Styx and Don sat at the bar of a restaurant chatting and drinking beer while waiting for Robin, Lindsay, and the girls to show up. Styx turned to the bartender to order another when he noticed Keys on the television screen. He waved at the bartender. "Can you turn that up?" Don turned and looked where Styx was pointing. "Musically, the show Monday was horrible, Crystal," Keys said. "Oh, I'm sure the audience didn't notice, but it was a technical mess. And don't get me started on that blatant display at the end. I mean, come on, Axel and his daughter screwed that song up. It won't be played like that on the road." "Easy, Don," Styx said, noticing his friend's fist clenching. The interview went on for another 15 minutes. Don was flabbergasted. Keys was rewriting history. Barry Rift had been Keys' idea, apparently. Even most of the early hits were influenced by his musical knowledge. After all, Keys was the only member of the band to have finished college. And his degree was in music. "I'll kill him," Don said softly as the news program turned to other things. "Not if I get to him first," Styx replied. Robin snaked her arms around Styx and kissed his neck. "Who are you two killing now?" "Keys," Styx said, pulling Robin close and patting his son on the head. "What now?" Styx explained what he and Don had just heard. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," Robin exclaimed. Lindsay and her charges arrived, and the group sat down to a nice dinner. Don and Styx kept Keys and his interview out of the discussions. "So when does the tour start, Don?" Lindsay asked. "We're opening up in Cleveland on October 12th. 20 cities in 35 days, Styx added. "We'll be back here for Thanksgiving. Then we're hitting the West Coast for 2 weeks. We're taking a month at Christmas and then doing the East Coast in January. And then home again in time to welcome the next member of the Matthews brood," Don added. Cassie put her hand on Don's arm. "Can we go on some of the tour, Dad?" "We?" "Jenna and me." Don hesitated for a moment. Lindsay jumped in. "School comes first, but if there are some shows during your breaks, I don't see why Jenna can't go along." "Please, Dad," Cassie begged. Don smiled. "We'll check the calendar and see what we can do. Otherwise, you're stuck here with Lindsay and Robin." "Okay, I guess." Don was the first to arrive at the band's rehearsal space. He opened the door and started warming up the equipment. He filled the refrigerator with some Bud Light as tradition dictated and then walked over to the whiteboard. He began writing a tentative set list on the board. A 2-hour show meant that most of the new CD songs would get played, as well as all of their big hits and a few other songs from the earlier ones. He blocked out 3 songs to be encores and began fitting things into a tentative order. No way will Lost Without You be an encore number, Axel. We're not doing that on stage again. I want no chance of a repeat of that garbage from Monday, Keys said, erasing the song from the board. Hello to you, too, Keys. Lost Without You stays, Bass said firmly as he nudged Keys aside and wrote it back on the board. I don't know where you get off criticizing Monday's show. You did everything you could to sabotage it, both during and after. Kiss my butt, Bass, Keys replied, drawing a line through Lost Without You on the board. I'm not giving Axel a chance to do that crap with his daughter on my tour. Your tour? Styx was incredulous. It's our tour, too. And I'm with Bass. Lost Without You stays. With or without Cassie, it's still one of our best. The audience expects our best, and we're going to give it to them. Don stepped away from the board and watched as the 3 argued about the music. He thought he'd be the one who had to argue with Keys about everything. But Styx and Bass were stepping up and having their say for the first time in a long time, especially for Bass. Don wondered what had changed in Bass. Usually he was siding with Keys, and the band was split on things until Don worked out a compromise. Don turned and opened the fridge, gathering 4 bottles of beer in his hands. He turned in time to catch Keys' next outburst. Lost Without You goes, or I go. The room was silent for a moment, and then Bass turned and looked at his friend. Well, there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the ass as you leave. Keys stared at Bass. This band is nothing without me. When you get your shit together, call me. I'll be home writing some music for a solo album. Keys headed for the door, pausing for a moment, expecting someone to tell him to stay. The trio called his bluff, and he left. Don turned back to the fridge and put 1 bottle back into it. He handed a beer to his companions and took a long swig. So, where do we go from here? Should I get Morty started canceling the tour? Hell no, Styx said. We're touring. Bass nodded. What about keyboards and vocals? Don asked. We won't play anything you can't sing, Axel, Bass replied. We can hire a keyboard player for the tour, Styx added. Okay, Don sighed. What if Keys changes his mind? Screw him, Bass said adamantly. After the shit he pulled last night, I don't think I want him around. Styx nodded when Don looked at him. Don pulled his cell phone out and called Morty. He had to know what the legal implications were. Morty agreed to look into things and get some agreements in place to end the 4-way partnership and reform it as a trio. Okay then, who do we know that we can get to play keyboards? Don asked. Bass looked at him for a moment and then said, how about one of the ladies from Monster? They sounded pretty good Monday. Are you looking to get in their pants, Bass? Styx asked seriously. Well, Bass took a deep breath. A week ago, I'd have said yes. But now I'm not sure. Don looked at him for a moment. What's going on, Walt? I kinda met someone. Kinda? Walt looked from Charlie to Don. He wasn't sure how much he wanted to tell them. Don smiled. Relax, Walt. You don't need to tell us any more that you want to. Walt took another sip of his beer. I've been meaning to talk to you about it anyway, Don. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, so I sort of wanted to ask you if... Oh, damn it. I'm interested in Jenna's mom, Lindsay. I met her after the show on Monday. And we talked for a while, and, I don't know, something clicked. I know you've been dissatisfied with life on the road for quite a while, Don. I discovered that I am too. I don't want a new chick in every town. Heck, they're really not even new anymore. I know why you and Charlie were worried. If we bring one of those girls on board for the tour, she's safe. I'm not going to spend the days making her uncomfortable with my attention. Say no more, Walt, Don said, reaching out and shaking Walt's hand. Lindsay's been through some tough times. I'm not going to be your competition. Her business, her past, and, frankly, your past are. Walt nodded. Enough of this sappy crap, Styx said. We've got some rockin' to do. You gonna talk to the Monster gals, Don? Don nodded. We're also going to have to think about how many of Keys' songs we want to do. None, Morty said, walking into the room. I talked to him a few minutes ago. He's going to challenge you for the name and the copyrights to everything. He doesn't have a leg to stand on, but I suggest we sit down with him and hammer out some kind of agreement before things get messy. How messy? Don asked. He could hold up the tour and freeze any income from today until it's settled. Can you get John, you, and I together in a room in the next week or so, Morty? I think so, Axel. He'll probably want his new agent as well. Fair enough. Any reason that I shouldn't start looking for a temporary keyboard player for the tour? No, I think that's a reasonable course of action. Do you have anyone in mind? I'm thinking of one of the ladies from Monster. Morty nodded. I was thinking of offering Monster a chance to open for us on at least part of the tour. Morty frowned. We have an opening act for the West Coast Swing in December. Other than that, I think it could be arranged. I'm not sure the promoters will be all that interested, but if the band wanted to share some of their take... Don looked at Styx and Bass. Both nodded. Morty smiled. Good luck, Axel. Let me get back to you after I talk to John. Either of you want to be there? Morty looked at Sticks and Base. Base shook his head. I trust you and Don to look after things, Charlie said. Morty nodded and left. Let's call it a day, Don said. I'll call you when I get some keyboards lined up. The trio shook hands, and Don locked the room up. Don slipped into the bar quietly. It was early, and there were only a few customers. He knew that Monster was playing that night, and hoped to catch them before they went on. Oh my God. He heard a woman's voice from the doorway as he sat down facing the stage. Relax, Cassidy. He probably just stopped for a drink. Do you think he'd mind if I sat with him, Haley? Don smirked, and then wiped the smile off his face and turned toward the door. He could see Haley Marshall and Cassidy Summers standing there. He stood and waved them over to the table. Good to see you two lovely ladies again. Don offered his hand. Can I get you a beer? Cassidy Summers turned pink and nodded as she shook his hand. I'll pass, Mr. Woodson, Haley said, taking Don's hand. Axel, or Don, please. Sit. We can't stay long, Haley said, turning the chair around and putting her arms on the back of it. Don smiled. Haley was definitely a beautiful woman. Her long blonde hair hung loosely about her shoulders. She wore a Monster t-shirt that fit very well. Don struggled to keep his eyes from looking lower. Sit down, Cassidy. He won't bite. Not hard anyway, Haley teased her suddenly self-conscious friend. Don smiled as she sat. He definitely had both girls' attention. He studied Cassidy for a moment. She and Haley were almost complete opposites physically. Cassidy had short brown hair and a narrow face. She was thinner and shorter than her friend. So what can we do for you, Axel? Haley said, smiling at the obvious hero worship of her bandmate. I'm in need of a keyboard player for Barry Riff's upcoming tour. I didn't think Key West needed any help. Or wanted any, for that matter, Haley said, leaning back a little. Don took a breath. He won't be going along on the tour. Key West and Barry Riff parted ways this morning. Does this have anything to do with the interview I saw last night? Haley probed. Let's say that the interview brought things to a head and leave it at that. Okay, YS. And do you want one or two keyboard players? Haley looked at her friend. Cassidy was in shock. Monster captured my interest at the show on Labor Day. I liked your style, especially, Haley. I don't know whether we need or want both of you. We hadn't gotten that far in our thinking. I wanted to make the offer, see if you and Cassidy are interested, and then see what happens when we play together. I think it's safe to say we're interested. And I'm certainly flattered, but we're not in the same class as Key West. Don shook his head. I think you might have an inflated opinion of John's abilities. Haley raised an eyebrow. Don looked at both of them. Think about it. He handed both of them a business card with his cell phone number on it. He looked at his watch. I have an important date with my daughter, so I need to run. If you have questions, call me. Talk it over with each other, and with the rest of your band. I need to have an answer in a few days so we can set up a time to play together. Good luck tonight. Don shook both girls' hands and headed out of the bar. Can you believe it? Cassidy gushed as the rest of Monster sat down with her and Haley. Wasn't that Axel Woodson, their bass player? Lee Hanks asked. Yep, Haley replied. What did he want? Haley looked at Cassidy, who paled. He wants either Cassidy or me or both to join Barry Rift on their upcoming tour. Oh wow, that's great. You two really deserve it. Selena Banks, the drummer said, jumping up and hugging her two friends. What happens to Monster if they go? Jane Perkins, the guitar player, asked quietly. There was silence around the table. The tour can't last that long, Selena said. I won't stand in their way. This is their shot. Cassidy took a deep breath. It's Haley's shot. I'm not good enough, but she is. And if she goes, we can still play. And when the tour's over, she'll play with us again if she wants. Don't sell yourself short, Cassidy. You are good enough. Axel wouldn't have asked if he wasn't interested. She's right, Jane added. The other two nodded their heads. Cassidy smiled and took a deep breath. Thanks, girls, but you know Haley's the star. She could go places. She wants to go places. I don't. Bruce and I are going to tie the knot soon. You all know I want kids. She took another deep breath. I don't know if my doctor will let me tour with Barry Rift anyway. Doctor? Haley turned and faced her friend, putting her hand on Cassidy's. I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks, he thinks. I was going to wait until after I told Bruce tonight to tell you, but I think you needed to know now. Congratulations. The other four yelled almost together as they hurried to hug Cassidy. Are you sure it's okay for Jenna to stay with you tonight, Dawn? Lindsay asked, nervously. Of course it is. You go have a good time with Walt. He smiled as Lindsay blushed. Jenna and Cassie were grabbing stuff from her room. Lindsay was pacing nervously. You're going to wear out the carpet, Lindsay, Dawn teased. It's been a long time since I've been on a date, Dawn. Relax. Be yourself. Walt's a good guy, mostly. I'll take Jenna home after the movie, and she and Cassie can have a sleepover. That's not necessary, Dawn. I'm not going to be out that late. I have to open the store at 7 tomorrow. It's not how late you are out that matters, Dawn said, raising his eyebrows. I don't know how it is when you date, Dawn, but Walt will not be inside this apartment tonight. Dawn smiled. Lindsay was visibly less nervous. His teasing seemed to work. You make sure Mr. Brown shows you a good time and gets you home at a reasonable hour. He has early rehearsal tomorrow. Lindsay smiled. Yes, Dad. That's my line, Cassie said, dragging Jenna with her toward the door. Don was up early. He was sure the girls would be sleeping in. After all, it was Saturday, and he had distinctly heard voices around 3 a.m. Oh, to be young again. He sighed as he closed and locked the door. Don was noodling around on his Les Paul when Haley wandered into their practice space. Don smiled and turned his amp off. Glad you could make it, Haley. How was the gig last night? We rocked the place, and we were out pretty late last night celebrating. Celebrating? Cassidy's pregnant, and her boyfriend asked her to marry him. She won't be joining us, by the way. Don nodded. He showed Haley the keyboards he had purchased. I just replaced the stuff John had with new stuff. If it's not what you want or need, let me know. We'll see about getting some other stuff. Sticks showed up, and they chatted a bit. Where's Bass? Sticks asked after a bit. He had a date last night, so who knows? Sticks smiled. I see you got the set list up. For the next 20 minutes, Sticks, Don, and Haley talked about the music. Haley knew several of Barry Riff's songs, and soon they were jamming and goofing off with several. Bass hustled in the room and joined them. Soon the practice space was filled with music. They ended with a loud clash of cymbals. Glad you could join us, Bass, Don smiled. Sorry, Axel. I was out kinda late last night and slept through the alarm. He smiled. Welcome, he said to the good-looking keyboard player. I'm Walt Brown. They call me Bass. Haley smiled. I'm Haley. We sound pretty good together, Axel, Bass said. I think we should keep her. Sticks laughed. Can you sing, Haley? Depends on the song. What do you have in mind, Sticks? Don asked. Sticks slipped around his drum kit and waved for Haley to join them. Bass can play a bit of guitar, right? Bass nodded. Let's try Lost Without You, like you did Labor Day. You and Bass on acoustic, I'll fill with tambourine, and you and Haley sing. I don't know, Sticks, Haley said hesitantly. I think it's a great idea, Bass added. That's the way the song should have been done. He's messed it up with all his overproduction and strings. Don shrugged and grabbed his 2 acoustic guitars. He and Bass spent a moment tuning. Bass nodded and began strumming just like Cassie had. Don jumped in, and so did Sticks. Haley stepped up beside Don and joined her voice to his on the choruses. Sticks shook the tambourine as the song ended and then sighed. Damn, it was a little rough, but with some practice, I think it will work. Don looked over at the clock. It was nearly 4. Time to head back to the house, he said to himself. I can't believe you are even thinking about going out with that jerk, Cassie, Don heard as he walked in the door. He's not so bad, Jenna. Besides, no one else has asked. He's a senior, Cassie, and from what I hear, he doesn't treat girls very nice, Jenna added, concerned. It's only pizza and a movie, Jenna. Cassie was clearly miffed that her friend didn't like Bobby Jones, the senior quarterback. Oh, hi, Dad. Don smiled. Am I interrupting something? He asked as he set his keys down on the table near the door. Not really. So what's this about a date? Don asked as he hugged Cassie. Bobby Jones asked me to go to Tricasos and then to a movie tonight. Who is Bobby Jones? Don asked, sitting down. He's the starting quarterback on the varsity team. He's in my algebra class. How old is he? 18, I think. I'm not sure I'm all that comfortable with you dating someone that much older than you, especially your first date. Come on, Dad. It's not like I'm going to sleep with the guy. It's just pizza and a movie. Are you sure that's how he sees it? Cassie thought for a moment. Well, no, but he's a nice guy. Don looked at his daughter. She was nearly as old as her mother was their first time. He could see her excitement at being asked out. I will not judge the boy yet, he told himself. Everyone deserves a chance. Please, Dad. Don sighed. Against his better judgment, he nodded. Okay, make sure he has time to stop here and meet me before you go. You have your cell phone, right? Yes, Dad. What about you, Jenna? Jenna frowned. Cassie and Mom both have dates. I guess it's you and me then, kid. Anything special you'd like to do? Jenna shrugged. Cassie grabbed her friend. You have to help me get ready. Don watched as the 2 girls, no young women, he reminded himself, hurried down the hall to Cassie's room. Don frowned as he watched Bobby Jones escort his daughter to his Mustang. Something about the boy didn't sit right with him. Bobby answered all the questions just right. He shook Don's hand, met his eyes, but something just felt wrong. He wondered if he weren't too protective of Cassie. He wanted her experiences to be good. Don sighed as he closed the door and turned back to the movie that Jenna put in. Cassie was already frowning when they finally sat down in the theater. The pizza had been good, but she had gotten tired of Bobby's endless football stories after just a couple of them. Then he wandered over to a table where some cheerleaders were sitting and spent almost 20 minutes talking with them, without even introducing her. Cassie sat there, frustrated, picking at her pizza. As the theater darkened, Bobby slipped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her closer. Their shoulders touched as the opening credits rolled. Cassie really wanted to enjoy the movie. A few minutes later, Bobby started rubbing her shoulder. At first, she ignored it, focusing on the movie, but when he kept shifting and trying to pull her closer, she calmly placed her hand over his to stop him. She released it when an intense scene unfolded on screen, gripping the arm of her seat in excitement. But Bobby's hand kept moving, clearly ignoring her signals. Cassie whispered, "No, Bobby," and firmly grabbed his hand again, placing it back on his own lap. He said nothing, keeping his attention fixed on the movie. Annoyed, she realized she had missed an important part of the film because of his distraction. When they left the theater, Bobby kept trying to put his arm around her, but Cassie pushed it away each time. "I said no, Bobby." "Ah, come on, Cassie. Don't be so uptight," he muttered. "What?" She snapped. "You act like you're all interested and then pull away," he said defensively. "I was trying to get you to respect my space," she said sharply. Bobby opened the car door for her and got in. As they drove off, Cassie noticed they were heading the wrong way. "My house is the other way," she said. "Your dad said you didn't have to be home till 12. "It's only 10, Bobby replied. "I don't care. Take me home, Bobby Jones." Bobby chuckled and sped down a dark road leading into a park. "I said I wanted to go home, Bobby," she repeated firmly. "My dates don't go home this early, Cassie," he said. "Stop this car now," she demanded. Bobby slammed on the brakes. Cassie's head bumped the dash. "Ow, that hurt, Bobby," Cassie said, glaring at him. "Tough luck, tease. Here's the deal. You take that shirt off and climb in the back with me, or you walk." Cassie stared at him for a moment. "I don't think so, Bobby." She calmly unbuckled her seat belt and opened the car door. Bobby watched, expecting her to take off her shirt and get back in the car. It was at least 7 miles back to the mall. Cassie slammed the door and began walking back the way they came. He watched her for a moment and then spun the car around. Cassie looked up nervously as the Mustang screeched to a stop next to her. Bobby revved the engine and then rolled down the window. "One last chance." "Good night, Bobby," she said. Her hands were on her hips. "Have a nice walk home, bitch," Bobby hissed as he stepped on the gas. Cassie frowned as she watched his tail lights disappear around the bend. She reached into her purse and pulled her cell phone out. "Dad, can you come get me?" she said softly into the cell phone. "No, I'm fine. You were right about Bobby, though. I'm in Ashton Park, walking toward the entrance. I'm not sure how far in, though. Bobby was going pretty fast on the way in. We didn't turn off the main road, though." She closed the cell phone and hugged herself as she continued toward the entrance. Cassie shrunk back along the side of the road when she saw a set of headlights approach slowly. She stopped walking and put her hand in her purse. Her mom had given her a small can of mace that she insisted Cassie keep in her purse at all times. She felt the can and grasped it as the vehicle continued on toward her. The vehicle began slowing even more after its lights captured Cassie. It pulled to a stop and she recognized that it was a pickup truck like Dawn drove. She stood still. The driver's side door opened, and she saw the shadow of a man step into the lights. It was Dawn. With a shriek, Cassie launched herself toward her dad. Dawn grabbed her into a bear hug. For a moment, the two just stood there in front of the truck hugging. Dawn set her back on her feet and said softly, "Come on, Cassie. Let's get you back home." Cassie nodded and climbed into Dawn's truck. When Dawn turned the truck back toward home, Cassie began to sob. Dawn reached out and grabbed her hand with his. "It's okay, Cassie," he said, holding onto her hand. "If only I listened to you and Jenna," she sobbed. "God, he was such a jerk. I feel so stupid." Dawn just held her hand all the way home. When they were finally inside, he guided her to the sofa. Cassie's cheeks were still damp with her tears. She stared down at her lap. Dawn raised her chin with a finger and looked into her moist eyes. "I'm sorry you had to deal with someone like that on your first date," he said softly. "Don't get down on yourself, though. Tonight had nothing to do with you. It wasn't your fault. Guys like him treat all girls like that, but not all guys are like him. Whatever you do, don't let one jerk make you stop dating. There's a good guy out there for you. Mom said that sometimes you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you can find your prince. I hope you didn't kiss this one." "No way, Dad," Cassie frowned. "He had way too many warts." Dawn chuckled. "I think maybe it's time we went to bed. Jenna's already in your room." Cassie hugged Dawn and then hurried down the hall. October opened with a bang. Barry Riff's new CD was a big hit. Publicity fueled the CD's rise. The split with Key West filled the tabloids as the writers continued to speculate about the popular band. Rumors flew about who might replace Key West in the band after the tour. Haley Marshall fit right in with the band. Dawn found her enthusiasm for the music refreshing. The last few practices were filled with laughter and fun as they prepared to start the tour. Monster declined to go with them on tour to open the show, even after Dawn told them Haley could play with them as well. Apparently things weren't going all that well with Cassidy and her baby. They finally decided to skip the opening act. So at 7 p.m. on October 12th, Dawn sat at the soundboard in the middle of the Quicken Loans arena watching as the crowd slowly filled the seats. Most of the 20,000 seats were filled when the lights dimmed. "Ready, Axel?" the sound guy asked. "Hell yes. Cue Michael." A single spotlight lit up the stage. Michael Stanley, one of Cleveland's music icons and currently a very popular disc jockey, stepped into the spotlight. "Are you ready to rock?" Michael asked. The crowd cheered. "Please welcome Razor and Tie recording artists, Barry Rift." The crowd erupted as the spotlight faded, and another one opened on the right side of the stage. Styx strode into that spotlight holding his drumsticks over his head and setting a clapping beat with them. The audience joined almost immediately. When Styx reached his drum kit, another spotlight opened up on the right side and bass stepped into it, adding a throbbing backbeat. He strode to his usual spot on the right side of the stage. The crowd roared when another spotlight lit up the center of the arena and Axel began his guitar riff. The spotlight followed him as he walked slowly toward the stage. The audience continued to clap as the sounds of a piano joined in. The left side of the stage was still dark. Axel stepped on the lift and let it carry him up to the level of the stage. When he reached the microphone sitting at center stage, Styx yelled out a 4 count, and the stage lit up with lights as the band launched into Only One Way to Rock from their first album. For the first time, the audience could see Key West's replacement. Dawn turned and smiled as her voice joined his on the chorus. He could feel the crowd's excitement as the music filled the arena. His guitar sang as his fingers flew across the fretboard. He felt the magic as it had been so many years ago when Barry Rift started. This was a high like no other. The band's 2.5-hour show went like clockwork. The crowd enthusiastically cheered for them to return to the stage for an encore. The stage was dark for what must have seemed an eternity. Some of the crowd began to give up when 4 tightly grouped spotlights hit center stage. 2 stools and 3 microphones sat alone in the light. The band appeared at the back of the lights and stepped forward. Axel and bass took the stools, each balancing an acoustic guitar on his knee. Styx and Haley stepped up between them at the center microphone with tambourines. "Thank you, Cleveland," Dawn said softly into the microphone. "I think you might recognize this one." Bass began strumming. The rendition of Lost Without You was met with thunderous applause. Axel thanked the fans again, and the group left the stage for the final time. Dawn smiled and shook hands with the reporter from the scene, Cleveland's music-oriented newspaper. The woman smiled. "Nice show, Axel," Lacey Marks said. "Much better than the last one you did here." "Thanks, I think, Lacey. Really, the band sounds tighter, more relaxed." "Is that because Key West isn't touring with the band?" "Key West is no longer a member of Barry Rift," Axel said firmly. "Is your girlfriend going to be a permanent member of the band?" "I don't have a girlfriend, Lacey. I'm still getting over the loss of my wife." "Oh, come on, Axel. Surely you don't expect your fans to believe that Ms. Marshall is just a member of the band? If she's not your girlfriend, she must be Bass." "No, I know Bass' current girlfriend, and it's definitely not Haley. There's so much chemistry between you and Ms. Marshall on stage, especially during Lost Without You. That's a tribute to Ms. Marshall's musical talents." "I'm hearing rumors out of Central City that Key West is forming another band that he will be calling Barry Rift for a tour later this year. Can you comment on that? John and the rest of us have some legal issues to clean up as part of the dissolution of our long-standing partnership. Ownership of the name Barry Rift is one of those issues. The current issue of The Music Tattler has a cover story about your love affair with a 15-year-old girl. Can you comment on that?" Dawn smiled. "Yes, I have a 15-year-old girl living in my house. And I do love her. She is also my daughter. Beyond that, I have no comment." "Time to go, Axel," Morty said, smoothly slipping between the reporter and his star. "If you have more questions, Ms. Marks, we'll have to find another way. We need to get the bus on the road to Cincinnati." "If this is Saturday night, this must be Cincinnati," Bass said, as he entered the room backstage. Haley Marshall smiled. "Where's Axel?" "He's at the airport picking up Jenna and Cassie. They'll be here in 20. I didn't think they were coming to a show until next month." "Yeah, well, apparently Cassie's having some problems. Don agreed to try to talk to her tomorrow and then send her back to Central City." "What kind of problems?" Wes frowned. "It's not my place, Haley." "Sorry." Haley frowned. Don breezed into the room, waving as he hurried toward the dressing room to change. 5 minutes, he called out. "Sorry that I'm late." Haley turned to her mirror and checked her makeup once more. "I don't know why your mom insisted we come." Haley heard Cassie tell Jenna. "There's nothing wrong." "Yes, there is, Cassie. You haven't been out of your room in 4 days except to go to school. Bradley Weathers called yesterday, and you wouldn't even talk to him. Besides, I think she wants me to spend time with Wes." "Cassie, Jenna, you two are with me," Morty said firmly, interrupting the girls' discussion. Cassie whispered something that Haley missed, and then they were gone. So what did you think? Haley asked as she sat down next to Cassie. Oh my gosh, Haley. You guys sound fantastic. Better than the Labor Day show. And Dad seems to be really happy right now. Was Lost without you okay? I'm not trying to compete with what you two did. I like it. I'm not jealous, really. Your voice sounds better than mine anyway. Don't sell yourself short, Cassie. I've never heard the song done better than you two did. How are you doing? Are you adjusting to the new school okay? I guess, Cassie said somewhat sadly. As cute as you are, I'll bet the boys are all trying to get a date. Haley felt Cassie stiffen. What's the matter, Cassie? Cassie paled for a moment and looked away. Haley put her hand on Cassie's arm. Cassie turned back. I heard you and Jenna talking before the show. I'd like to help, if you'll let me. If not, I can butt out, and we'll find something else to talk about. Cassie was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. I miss my mom. I could talk about stuff like this with her and not feel like an idiot. I know I'm not your mom, Cassie, but you can talk to me about anything. I've been there, too. I'm sure Don's a good listener, and so are Jenna and Lindsay. If you don't want to talk to me, talk to one of them. But I can't talk to Jenna and Dad about this. I feel like an idiot. My first date was a disaster. Jenna and Dad both sensed something about Bobby that told them he was trouble. I missed it completely. Let me guess. He said all the things you needed to hear. How beautiful you are, how pretty your smile is, how smart you are. Did I miss any? No. And then he put you in a position where he thought he could get into your pants. How did you know? Been there, done that. I don't know many girls that haven't. Luckily, most of us get over it with a minimum of problems. But it was my fault. Dad didn't even get mad at Bobby. He came and got me and held me and told me there was someone nice out there for me. When was your date? Last Friday. Cassie nodded. That explains a lot. When I got to the practice space Saturday morning, I heard Sticks trying to settle Don down. I don't think I've ever seen Don as pissed off as he was that morning. The gist of what I got before we all settled down was that Don went and visited some kid before coming to rehearsal. The kid denied doing anything wrong, and Don warned the kid that if he got within 6 feet of you, Don would string him up by a very sensitive part of his anatomy with a broken high E string. Haley chuckled, remembering the tantrum that Don had that morning. High E string? Guitar string, Cassie. Real thin, likely to cut that part of his anatomy off. Oh, Cassie said, and then the image sunk in. Oh, the two giggled. Cassie looked serious again after they stopped giggling. So how do I get past this? I'm afraid every boy that asks me out will do the same thing. When the horse throws you, you gotta get back on and ride him, my daddy always said. Go out on a date with someone you can trust. Or go on a double date with Jenna. She's not having trouble with boys, is she? God, no. Her boyfriend's great. They are almost as cute together as Mom and Dad were. Cassie frowned and then smiled. Thanks, Haley, she said, hugging the blonde. Don saw Cassie hug Haley and wondered what was up. He finally finished with the reporters. It was time to talk to Cassie. How are you doing, kid? He said, slipping up next to Cassie. I'll leave you two alone. Good show, Axel. Keep your chin up, Cassie. Haley smiled as she stepped away from them. So Don started. I know, Dad. I'm sorry I was being a pain. I'll do better. And I'll apologize to Lindsay and Jenna. Wow, I'm good. I didn't even start talking, and you're doing everything I wanted. Don chuckled and hugged his daughter. Just for my peace of mind. What was the problem that you've managed to solve on your own? Haley helped me realize that it wasn't my fault that Bobby Jones was an a-hole, and that there are some nice guys out there. I thought we talked about that last week. We did. I missed the part about it not being my fault. I thought you blamed me because you didn't yell or scream at Bobby. Well, not that night, but I did later. I might have killed him that night. Yeah, Haley told me about it. I guess you didn't want me to see it, but, Dad, I needed to see it. I needed to see that you didn't blame me. The words weren't enough. Are they ever, Dad? No, you were right there, kid. Don smiled and hugged her again. I'm a rookie, Dad, Cassie. I don't know all the right things to do. You have to trust me that I want to do it right, and tell me when I'm not, okay? Sure, Dad. Can we find Jenna? I think I owe her an apology, too. They walked out of the dressing room together. Later, in the main room of the huge suite that Barry Rift was staying in, Morty brought good news. It's the American Music Awards, Axel. You've got to go. Well, someone from the band has to go. I suppose John would go, Morty teased. Don't even go there, Morty. Come on, how bad can it be? Barry Rift is the first true rock band to be nominated for Best Rock or Pop Group in years. You guys won't win, but someone should be there just in case. Besides, you need to start dating. Get your face in the papers. It's good for publicity. I don't want to date. Jesse's only been gone for 4 months. Styx smiled as he walked into the conversation. Axel. No one is asking you to go find a replacement for Jesse. You just need to spend some time with a nice girl whose company you enjoy. Surely there's 1 or 2 of them on the planet. I could take Cassie. No, both men said firmly. Or Lindsay. No, now there were 3 firm voices. Crystal? Don't go there. Dad, Cassie joined in. What? Are all of you in on this get Don a date thing? Don asked, staring at his friends and daughter. Well, everyone but Haley, Cassie said. What about Haley? The blonde said as she entered the suite, drying her hair with a big towel. Yeah, Cassie said, smiling and turning to her dad. What about Haley? Don thought for a moment and turned away. What is going on? Haley asked nervously. Don needs a date for the American Music Awards in 3 weeks. We got nominated as Best Rock or Pop Group. Someone needs to be there in case we win. Sticks and I are out. There's no way we let John do it. So it has to be Don. We were trying to help him think of a date. And my name came up? Well, sort of. Wes replied, suddenly not sure he wanted to talk about this. Don turned around and smiled. Sticks, why don't you? Wes and Cassie go find Jenna and get some ice cream. Wes smiled. You know, Axel, that sounds like a really good idea. Sticks and Morty started to say something. Wes looked right at Cassie and motioned with his eyes toward Haley. Cassie's eyes got huge as she understood. Please, Uncle Charlie, she said in her best little girl voice. Sticks looked at Don, who was signaling to the door with his eyes. Haley was staring at the whole lot of them in total confusion. Cassie grabbed Sticks and Morty's arms and practically pulled them out of the room. Wes quietly closed the door behind them. Axel? Haley was suddenly very nervous. Haley, would you please accompany me to the American Music Awards in 3 weeks? I don't date bandmates, Don. And I'm not ready to date at all, Haley. I just need a companion to sit with me while we watch someone else win the award. The press is not going to see it that way, and you know it. I'm sure you are right. But I would much rather have you there than anyone else I can think of. Please. Haley turned her back on him, thinking. Besides, Don said earnestly, I think you deserve some publicity. You are an important member of this band. And I think it's safe to say that we're going to want you to continue to be part of Barry Rift when the tour is over. Haley turned and stared at him. You're kidding, right? No. Would that be true if I said no to the award show? It has no bearing on the award show. We all see how well you fit with us musically and personally. It is something that John never truly did. When the tour is over and we get a few legal things ironed out, we'll all sit down and talk about it. Haley sighed. Okay, now, what can I do to convince you to be seen with me at the award show? Well, Haley pretended to ponder. I'll go to the awards show with you if you will take me out on a real date when the tour is over. What? Haley frowned for a moment. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this. I've had a crush on you for 10 years, Don. Playing on stage with you, especially doing Lost without you, is a fantasy come true. If it weren't for the awards show deal, you'd probably never ask me out. I can't let a chance like this go to waste. I would always wonder if we could have been more than bandmates. Don nodded. You're probably right, Haley. But I have this feeling that spending the next 4 months on the road with you will be really difficult if we're not careful. Haley smiled. I don't bite hard, but I do get even. And that, my dear, is precisely what I am afraid of. That's why the date is after the tour. That way, if there is a problem, we can go our separate ways. Don nodded. Deal. He held his hand out. Haley grabbed his hand and pulled him toward her. She smiled as she stood on her toes and brushed her lips on his. Don felt the soft kiss all the way to his toes. This deal is too important for just a handshake. Dear listeners, next part of this story will be published soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.